Good morning. Good morning, Lakhi. Good morning, Salim.
It's Vijay Sal.
Vijay Sal. Hi. Hello. How are we doing?
Are we live?
Yes.
Doing well, Kiona. Thank you so much. You're the host today, so don't be looking to me. You are the one in control. I'm your guest.
Okay. Yeah, so it's a very gloomy day in England because I see the weather is really, really cold and really, really gray, just the way it should be. And so it's so good to see you like early in the morning. So
That's
Lucky,
good.
what's been up? How's the week been?
It's been a very busy week. We've had a couple of people down with the colds and flus, because I think the flu season's kicking in. So about time to get another vaccine, I think.
Wow,
Sorry.
excelente. I've already had my two. Are they giving a third jab at all? Can we get a third jab for the virus, Kiona? Do you know?
Yeah, you can do a booster dose, but I think the government decided we can do it by the year end. It has been pushed back a bit because yesterday I was at Boots. I was like, "Can I get my booster dose?" They're like, "You're too early for that." But are we all Team Pfizer here?
Yeah. Yes, we
Yeah,
are. Yes.
we are
Yeah.
Team Pfizer. Right. So we're well protected, jabbed. That brings us to the question, Lucky. So what's today's topic? Are we talking about, we are talking about property, of course. So we're talking about how to build a multi-million dollar portfolio in the year 2021. The year 2021 is more like it's a post-pandemic era, which is not quite, which is we are slowly returning to normal, but things aren't normal yet. So I would like to know from you, what do you think are the top strategies that somebody who wants to get in the property market starter or build a portfolio should adopt in the post-pandemic era?
Well, I think there's tons and tons of strategies. But it's a very good question because 2021 is a completely different year. I met with a insolvency practitioner yesterday, and one of the key things that came out of our conversation, he said that the whole market is completely upside down, and he's saying that 2021, nearly all his staff need to be retrained because nothing has got legs on it in terms of business anymore. And he seems to feel that nearly every single person out there in business is now more in a holiday mode because for being a year off, they've got used to sort of taking time out, and he thinks that a lot of people just want an easy ride now. So a lot of people are just literally playing the victim game, and they want pity from the government. So all the government incentives, all the stamp duty incentives, all the furlough incentives, all the tenants not paying. He's saying that literally from a business point of view, there isn't much even finance out there to do much at a commercial level anyway. And the buy-to-let market has gone completely crazy as well. There's a lot of money that's been pumped into it, and there's a lot of shortage of housing. So everything actually is completely different from what it normally is. So I think we're in a
Hi, Kiona. You were off and then you came back again.
Yes,
Can you
yes.
hear
The
me?
internet is being a bit gory. Is
Yeah,
Lucky there? I can't see him on the screen.
he's fallen into a hole. I think he was standing next to a large manhole and he's fallen in, and he will rise up like a ninja
He
turd.
did, just like a phoenix. He's up.
Yeah, not a
yeah.
phoenix, more like a ninja turd.
Okay.
So anyway, I think
details.
there's going to be tons of points I can bring out. So I think the main one I'll start off with is that the principles of buying property still stay the same, but the fundamentals of the market are very different because there's going to be hardly any money in the market and very little finance as well once March kicks in. He was saying, and that by that time there's going to be quite a large change in the market because there's hardly any money in the market. So it's going to be quite a big opportunity for anybody who's got money to start buying property at the right price. So that's sort of, I'll start off with that point for the moment. Maybe Vijay Sal
Lucky,
probably got more profound words because he's a lot
yes.
older and wiser than me.
Okay. I would just like to ask, do you think it's a buyer's market or a seller's market at present, like in the UK property market?
It's seller's market in residential, but in commercial, it's somewhat, it's quite convoluted because a lot of landlords actually don't have as much control because they're not getting paid their leases. So in that case, it's you can sort of say, you know, it's a little bit more convoluted to try and work out really where the power lies. But I would say that even in that case, it's more a stronger buyer's market because there isn't any income coming in from commercial assets such as office blocks, etc. And the whole city isn't really filled up yet. So there's an opportunity to actually grab assets for anybody who's got deep pockets.
Interesting. So Vijay Sal, coming to you, what is your top strategy? The same question, basically. I would like to know what's your point of view regarding the same topic.
Right. It can't be a buyer's market and a seller's market, although Lucky's defined it by separating it with the residential to say, well, it's for the sellers, it's definitely in favor of the residential market, and for buyers, it's probably in favor of commercial. I've got a different take on it. I think this is more a quiet before the storm, and I think what happened during lockdown, a lot of people are not aware of this lockdown for us, for the general public, for the trade offline. We're back online. Okay. For the businesses was a stop of the clock. And I agree with what Lucky says, that when you're used to running a mile and all of a sudden the environment changes and you're told just to walk a few hundred yards, you're going to lose that traction you've got of being physically fit to run a mile. And I think that's the metaphor you can apply to the trading world in general, especially in the United Kingdom, because we've got a heavy, we have a heavy taxational band, but we also at the same time then have lots of cushions as well. Those cushions are the ones that Lucky's probably talking about. There's been lots of sibbles and bounce backs, and they've made people somewhat complacent. But I don't believe that it's made the market complacent. I think generally when you pull the rug from somebody who's running a business, who just from out of nowhere, you decide that because of a virus, everything is in lockdown, and you stop their business, and then you give them easy money, because technically bounce backs and sibbles were easy to get. Now it's like having a particular scenario that now the lenders and the government and the banks are going to want to claw that money back. And he's right, because a lot of these people now are probably claiming that it was not their fault, it was a bad market, their businesses are not back online, which is the truth, it's not made up. You may get one or two businesses that are operative, but in the general, most businesses are still trying to find their way back into the market because everybody's asleep, not just one part of the market, buyers, sellers, consumers, everybody has changed their way of thinking of consumerism, as is the word. So you're prone to get that attitude. But I think when you're talking to an insolvency practitioner, he's somewhat semi-government. He's not facing towards clients, he's facing towards the government. So he thinks these people are all trying to, they're so used to being on holiday. But it's not the case. I think the case is that once government takes decisions in advance that affect the public, they are duty bound, they are responsible to ensure that those people that are affected do not leave or lose their leases or their livelihood. So, I've got a different take on it. I think mainly government is responsible, and I think government take lots of decisions that are not done by general consensus. It's not done by taking a vote. It's just done by, senior people in certain departments who say, yeah, lockdown. Okay, lockdown. Why lockdown? Oh, it's a disease that's airborne. It's also, you can catch it anywhere. It stays on the surface. The only thing this disease didn't do was drive a car itself, I think. So when you do that type, I mean, if you take that type of decision for and behalf of the general populace, you are responsible to ensure the populace gets its bearing back. You can't just leave them when you decide the economy is back online, unless there was another purpose for lockdown and it wasn't just the virus. I hope that answers some of the questions.
Yeah, just to follow up with that, I would like to ask that, do you think that the measures which were introduced by the government in a view to boost the property market, despite the virus, the lockdown, everything has in a way backfired or not have been as effective?
Say that again, I didn't get that last bit.
Do you think that during the lockdown, the government in the UK government did take up many measures, like the most popular one would be the stamp duty holidays, to boost the property market to ensure there's not a slump because of the ongoing lockdown? Do you think it has backfired or not been as effective as the government had deemed it to be?
It's, what it is in government. It's a bit like being in a third world country. Government in the United Kingdom, government departments, local authority, they do not have a financial realization of implication. So they'll do something, say something. They don't really care about what it will do or the effects it will have. Now, if they put a stamp duty holiday in, well, why do you put a stamp duty holiday in when you know there isn't any business happening? There's only one reason, is that you want stimulus. But if you want stimulus from money that's being printed, remember the money that they pumped in with the bounce backs and the symbols wasn't genuine GDP revenue, it was printed money. So in England, I think the United Kingdom, they call it, is it fraction? No, it's not fractional lending. It's called quantitative easing. So it's another name for printing false money. So when you're printing false money to throw at people, you're looking for clever ways of getting that money back. And the clever way to do that is say, right, we will give you a holiday for stamp duty, right? But ultimately, there is a transaction going on, and in that transactions, lawyers are paid, land registry is paid, There's lots of other organizations which are working in the background with conveyancing that keep afloat. Now, and you're also creating transactions. Now, what they do is they use this stats to create false impression about the economy recovering or it being stable. It's just clever number crunching. And I don't believe the policy of stamp duty mitigation or waiving this stamp duty for a short time has any real impact except for a short term, movement of money from one hand to the other. But is that really financial policy? No, it's not. If they continued it, if it became a permanent policy, yes, you will see when the economy does switch back on, there'll probably be more money being pumped into the real estate and housing market. Then you can say it's a policy. All it was is plastic surgery. You've got this ugly woman called United Kingdom, big and fat, bulging at the seams, and all of a sudden you've got this plastic surgeon turn up and say, right, I'm going to cut the nose off a bit, I'm going to shorten her ears, I'm going to tuck up her chin, and that's called plastic surgery. It's not policy. So I wouldn't even put it in anywhere except for, for those people who've taken the benefit of buying a property and not having to pay stamp duty. Otherwise, it's not policy. If it was policy, it should stay. Then you'll see the advantages of it. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. I would like to say, so moving on to Lakhi, as Vijay Sal has drawn a very interesting comparison that it's still the ugly woman down there. The plastic surgery didn't, help in the long run. So you have been, you call yourself the property fixer. So you have been in the market and you've watched it with a close proximity. Do you think that you agree with Vijay Sal's points on the stamp duty holiday and the other incentives that were given during the lockdown by the government to ease the property market? Lakhi, you're on mute.
Just to go back to the original point, Vijay Sal is very long in the tooth with a lot of experience in international markets. So I think his analysis on economic factors are second to none anyway, although he does actually play the Joker quite a lot as the host normally. But today, for the first time ever, we've seen the serious side of him. So it's getting kind of scary. The truth is now coming out about what's really happening in the global economy, because he's just as wise as the Kaiser report. Have you heard of the Kaiser report, Joanna?
Yes.
So I think Vijay Sal should do his own Kaiser report. It'd be really good. So it could be the wiser report from Vijay Sal. So I think he could have his own channel, I think, with analogies like the one he came up with just then. So that's spot on, I think, in terms of what he's saying.
Yes.
I back Vijay Sal.
Well, feel left out. But coming back to the original topic. So the first strategy that we were pretty much fixated on the post-COVID market and how things have changed, and things are still, as you say, that there's a long way to get back to normal, and we are currently at the risk of facing a price correction because of the activities of the decisions made by the government in the recent past with the lockdown and everything. And as we just clearly say that this was not the GDP revenue or the fiscal surplus that was used. It was basically money was rather printed for this purpose, and usually in the short run, especially since it's not a long run method, since it's in the short run, this doesn't look good, and it's definitely going to have some repercussions, which unfortunately the people in the property market they'll have the incidents on. So Lakhi Singh, moving back to you, what what do you think are you say you had a lot of strategies, but we have only focused on one. So if you could tell us about the next strategy that you think that should be taken into consideration while building a BTL portfolio in the year 2021?
Okay, well, I think everything goes back to, if you think back to the 1980s sort of 1920s. Everything goes back. If you rewind back to 100 years, we possibly are now playing out the same sets of issues or similar sets of issues that were played out then internationally, with certain wars happening, certain instability in certain countries, and a lot of monetary issues and business issues. So I think there's going to be quite a similar sort of play in the market. This is when the Rothschilds and the large bankers, JP Morgans, these sort of organizations sort of came into play. The Trump family, all they did was they got all their cash together. So I think, to keep it really simple, pricing and valuations can't be relied upon easily. So it all comes down to yield, and even yield can't be relied upon now with COVID-19. All of a sudden, somebody says, sorry, Delta's come in now for another year, we're going to have another lockdown. So the level of change and the reality of what might happen by March 2022 means that anybody now going into the property market, they've got to be extra switched on. And one of the only ways that you can probably guarantee that you're going to make a lot of money in property now is that if you're buying a parcel of land and you know that you're going to get planning on it, and then your net return on that project is something like 60% net margin because you've got the land so cheap. So that's probably one of the safest strategies in terms of making money, because at least you know what the cost of land is. And if you've got high potential getting planning and you're going to get a massive level of development on there that you weren't expecting, then that's probably one of the safest routes into the market. If you've got cash as well, then you don't need to rely upon finance houses. You get the land, you get your planning, you build out, and then if you sell or you don't sell, as long as you know you're guaranteed your yield in your asset, then you're on to winner. I think a lot of larger corporations, a lot of large strategic houses, they're doing end-to-end purchasing now. So they buy something, they build out, they have a 5-year hold strategy where they build the uplift into the rentals as well. So they're basically controlling the whole supply chain of what they're doing. So I think that's one strategy. I think that sounds pretty plausible, but you've got to have your exits lined up to be able to ensure or guarantee your returns.
So, one thing that I would really want to ask is that you're talking about land. So, how important is location in terms of strategy, in this particular strategy? How important is how do we factor in location and rental prices in the area in terms of it?
Location is critical because you can be in one part of the country, and you won't get any lending on that, regardless. Doesn't really matter how good the land is. If there isn't really a demand for the rental at the end of the property, be it a buy-to-let property portfolio or be it office block or commercial, if you haven't got your exit sorted out, either through some sort of social housing or something that's actually a 100% sort of done deal contract with the council, then what you're doing is a lot of lenders, well, hardly any lender will actually want to give you any money towards that. And if you've got deep pockets and you're going to build out yourself and you haven't got the exit, then you're going to be sitting on a dead duck, because it's not going to be easy to sell that assets years down the line.
So basically, location is important, and we have to look at the yield should be. And one important thing, the numbers that you say, the 60% margin, that's a lot higher than usual. So Vijay, do you agree with everything that Lakhi just mentioned in terms of margin?
I would say if you're looking for a safe investment, it's probably better to invest in the unit development, which is land. Land is always the basic unit of development. But it's like anything in property. They say you make your profit once you purchase, and the meaning of that is that if you don't buy for the right price, you end up losing your profits because you've over purchased. Even in land, I would say, like he's right, you can over purchase if you don't know what the value of the land is. One difference I will say in what Lucky answered is that Lucky's added in the pitfalls in purchasing and the risks involved in land. I think if we take that out of the subject and just focus on your question, and that is what are the criteria for purchasing land? It is definitely location, but it's more important to buy it where it is probable to get lending, highly probable rather, I'd say. It has a demand for housing, and then location probably falls into 3 or 4 for me, because location really is something that plays out, number one, once you've got the development. So people will choose to buy a flat in Mayfair, which is where Lucky spends most of his time, than buy a flat in Reading, even though Reading's got a good value for for the property market. But why would someone rather buy in Mayfair than buy in Reading? Because of location. When you go to units and unit purchases, the cost of the land, it's not really important location. It's important that land is able to be built on, so that you do get planning easily, so it doesn't fall into a green belt. Secondly, that it is in an area that will have a demand. So whether it's not the best property spot in the world, but there is a demand for housing and there's a demand for the rental market, then again, you will always come up trump. And the third issue being location. I think location counts automatically when you're buying the fixed asset, the developed property. That does determine the overall value in comparisons. But when you're trying to put money somewhere which is safe in a volatile market, I totally agree with Lucky. I think spending on a unit cost, that is the land cost, provided the planning and the market demand is there, is paramount. And I would suggest there was a company about seven, no, it's about about 16 maybe years ago, maybe plus minus, that was doing something called land banking. Probably when you were still a little baby, Kiona. How old were you about 16 years ago? 2, 3?
No, I'm 23 now, so I was not definitely not 2 and 3.
2 or
I was
3.
9.
Ooh, can you imagine Kiona trying to buy land as a 2-year-old? That's really cute.
The baby discount.
Have a handful of toffees in her hand and try to buy land with her toffees. But no, there was a company back in, it was known as UK Land Banking, I think, UKLB or something. Do you remember that, Lucky?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So I think there's quite a few of them. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a land banking company. What happened is they were trying to get people into the property market, not by trying to buy properties, but buy a small square of land. So they had unit prices like 6,000 and 10,000 and then 15,000. So depending upon the cost that you wanted to pay into, you would buy an X amount of squares in that land plot. Now, the purpose of that was effectively to get people into the property market, to get cash to acquire, and effectively then those assets would at one stage be liquidated in a development. So the land bankers would get their money back from development money. So when the developers came in and said, right, I am buying that 2-3 acres of land, I'm going to convert it into 3,000-4,000 houses, that money came in and it would be used to pay off the investors. Now, I think there was a downside to that, and that was that some of these companies started to find there wasn't any regulation on them. There was no way of checking whether they'd actually acquired or the land they had acquired was, just like he said, whether it was eligible for planning and development. And I think a lot of the land plots they acquired were greenbelt, and they weren't able to be built on. So people had put their money into something that was never going to get the money out, because there was never going to be planning, there was never going to be construction. But I think if people want to get into property, or at least put some money into something that will have a growth in property, I think starting from the bottom upwards in this market is probably the safest bet you're going to get. That's if you haven't got large amounts of money. I totally agree with it.
On a lighter note, I just Airbnb that you know where you lend out lands. When I was in India, there would be I'd get really big ad descriptions of pop-ups every single second. Be a lord today in Scotland, own 1 square meter of land. It's basically like they tell you that this is a land that you own, and they give you a transcript, and they're like, yeah, this is your land. You don't know that land exists or not. You can't have any claim on it, which is the fact that you call yourself a lord. Of course, I do not qualify to be a lord. So yeah, that kind of made me chuckle. But I would come back to Lakhi on following up with a question, is that if today, on today's date, in today's market, if somebody has £1 million and they really want to invest that £1 million in property, in BTLs, if rental is one of their prime in the prime focal point, what do you think, and how do you think they should spend those £1 million in terms of property investing in the year 2021, which is essentially post-pandemic?
Okay, well, there's about 20 or 30 points that come to mind, but I'll try and keep them narrow to a few so that it doesn't get too long-winded. So the first point is that the whole taxation issues around property are now massive. So if you bought a property under your personal name, you can't offset any of the income against the interest. I'm not sure whether you're aware of that. That's actually a legislation that's kicked in the last 2 or 3 years. It's been staggered until it came into fruition, I think in April last year, as a fully fledged sort of law. So in order to counter that, the first thing anybody's got to do is to make sure that they get some professional tax advice, because it's probably going to be wiser to be buying in an SPV, in a limited company. So that's point number one. Point number two is that the market is completely inflated at the moment, a lot of plastic surgery. So if you are going to be buying something now, you might be buying something that's 30 or 40% or 50% inflated. And then you might find that if you wait around, you might be able to buy the same asset for half the price if you do your research and your homework. So I think that's the second point. The third point is that, as Vijay Sal said, from the I think we should call him from the Wiser report. It's like a good steal of the name Kaiser report. From the Wiser report next to me, because he's got that sort of look, and just need to have a slightly sort of Nordic sort of voice or something, then probably like be able to emulate the Kaiser report in some ways. But Vijay Sal is more original, I'm sure. So I think the third point is really the point of purchase. So it's not a question of the market sometimes, it's actually just you got to be in the arena to be able to know really what's happening, where the hustle is. So if you want to find a good deal, it's not a question of just the market. The market is up and down. But if you're in the market all the time, then there's lots of people in the market now looking for deals, but they're not paying top dollar for them. They want at least 20 to 30% to 40% discount, especially if they want to buy anything. So you got a lot of people waiting around for deals. So, but not many people buying at the moment because they're holding off, because they know that the prices are inflated. So if they are buying, they're buying strategically. So they might buy something where they can get planning gain, or they can get better multiples. So the money goes back to the original point, is in first of all point of purchase, and the other is actually value add. So, and the third is an income potential. So if you've got a piece of land which has got potential of planning, or you've got a property that's got potential of development or refurbishment, and you know that there's a huge retail demand and houses are literally flying out the window, literally on that road, there's so much demand that you can't go wrong, then it all comes down to your due diligence. So your purchase price is critical, your value add is critical, and then as a worst case, if the market were to change and you can't sell the asset, if you know that you can yield somehow because you've got a strong exit with a tenant of sorts, or a variation of tenants that you can plonk into that property and get the yield you want, if you're forced to hold, then you can't go too wrong. So that's a few things that I'd like to say, but I can continue for ages and ages, but I don't want to overemphasize all the different points. But I think those are the sort of key ones I think I'd be considering.
That's really well surmised. Now moving on to yourself. So do you have anything to add to what just Lakhi said? Because I think he surmised it really well.
Okay. He surmised it, I think. Well, all I've got to add to that is you've got to keep in mind that the legal framework for a traditional assured short hold tenancy is slowly going to be changing. So we're not going to be going into yearly tenancies very soon. A lot of the tenancy market will become leasehold. So you will literally be taking on a 3 to 5 year lease of your rental apartment. So you won't really be taking on a yearly renewable tenancy anymore. That's one thing that's very important to bear in mind if you want to look at an investment market, because the investment market, like he says, has to have sustainability. Obviously, property goes hand in hand with tenants, because if you've got properties, you want it to be rented. And if you've got assets and you want them to bear yield, you need tenants. If you're looking at assets just to sit on them for long term, that's a totally different market. That's probably more on the land banking side and the large hedge funds. And we're not talking to that market. We're talking to Mr. Average Joe Blog, property portfolio owner and downwards. The second thing to remember is there is a new concept that's coming on the market, and that is serviced apartments. So if you're going to invest £1 million, I would seriously suggest to people to be looking at the concept of serviced apartments. So it's not really about how many units you can buy, it's about the services you can provide. And if you can do them in a clever way, you don't have to be buying 10 units with 100, with 1 million. You can be buying 2 or 3 units, but you could have ancillary services, and those services will get you higher yield. So that's probably my only bit to add to it. Otherwise, most of the points that Lakhi makes they're generally, because there's so many points. But if we stick to that general principle, two things to bear in mind: the landscape of the way housing will be rented will change, and the new upcoming concept in property in the United Kingdom specifically is serviced apartments. So you'll find lots of old commercial assets being converted into serviced apartments. And I do think that's where the money's going to be.
Essentially, because I remember from my personal experience, I've been a student, and serviced apartments definitely something that I didn't mind paying for more. So, in Bristol, you might I was doing my master's in finance in Bristol in the year 2018, and I used to stay in this HMO, and they used to have regular cleaning services, and the bed sheets and towels would change, and they charged, like, given the area and given the size of the room and everything, the prices were quite higher as compared to some of my friends who were living in a space which was similar to mine, and they were paying lesser rent. But the fact that it was service, it's less hassle and so well maintained, most of us didn't mind to pay. So I think that service apartments is definitely, even if you look at HMOs or from a student's point of view, which I can personally attest, we would always pick serviced apartments over non-service because it's work less done and the property is well maintained. Even on the landlord side, the property is well maintained, it's regularly inspected, and it only ensures the longevity of the property and how students are maintaining it, or maybe the tenants are maintaining it. So definitely.
Excellent. Wow. Well, okay. I mean, in the service apartment, for a lot of people who don't know what that is, it's a bit like having a hotel, but in a house. So there's certain rules, I think, but generally everything is provided on board, and depending on what you take, you pay more or less. Is that right, Kayona? Is that the way it works?
Yes, yes. It depends on the services, but I think I would personally say that I was staying in this one property called Marlborough House in Bristol. It was in prime location, BS1, and we were like the towels would be we would be given towels any time of the day, as many times as we would want. The bedding was changed like twice a week. There was cleaning, deep cleaning of the all the amenities like the washroom, the kitchen, everything, once a week. And basically it felt more homely because in India labor is cheap, as I always say, and you would always come back home to a bed that is made. And I have never seen stinky sheets in India, and here I am struggling to even keep up with my clothes in the laundry. So yeah, service apartments is definitely something that I stand, because that it just makes life easier, and paying a few, £100 more in lieu of such services definitely makes sense, both from the tenant side because the property is well maintained, and from the landlord side as well. So moving on, Lakhi Singh, do you have anything to add to one thing that I would say, that £1 million is a lot of money, and recently in last April there was alongside the stamp duty, it was introduced that you can only pay 5% of deposit, and you can the mortgage rates were like revised for individuals. It was mostly, as I remember, it was mostly directed towards young professionals, high earning professionals who earn over £70,000 a year, and they wanted young professionals to make it easier and more convenient and accessible for them to own houses. So do you think that, that, as I always go back, like as Vijay Sal said, that since stamp duty was not continued for longer, this 5% deposit scheme is still in the market. Do you think that that has impacted the market in any way?
Yeah, I think
in terms of buying?
a lot of the government incentives had a huge impact, because it just means that a lot of properties have got a lot of demand that they wouldn't otherwise have, because you're getting such cheap incentives to buy property, and that a lot of the properties then flying out the window, because that's the reason. That's one of the other main reasons, is not only that there's been money pumped in with the bounce backs and the furlough, and with stamp duty type incentives, but also the government's given a lot more incentives to first-time buyers with certain schemes, nurses, students, etc. So they've definitely benefited. So it just makes it easier for the exit for anybody that's actually involved, especially in sort of main city centres around the UK. Developers have literally haven't had to worry about whether they're going to get a glut of properties sitting on their books. So that's actually made it a lot easier. So that's just one point. The other point is that I think if somebody's got £1 million, it's not always a must that you've got to follow a traditional route of buying property and just refurbishing and buying a piece of land. It goes back to what Vijay Sal said. It all comes down to your research and actually your concept. So, if you've got a concept and you can get a 20 times or 30 times multiple for your business, then that's probably one of the most exciting ways of making money, which is that if you've got the money and you've got the assets, you've structured them in a particular way, and you can also leverage institutional money, and you can actually list your company on the market, then that's probably the cleverest way of actually making money in the market, because a lot of money is around data and having acquisition of clients or data of particular type on your books. So, if you've got a clever idea that's actually a bit different, it may be worth taking out 6 months, not spending your money, holding on to it, looking at a concept that's actually market or foolproof or market proof, but it's also got 10 or 10 times scale to it. And, somebody like Vijay Sal is actually very strategic when it comes to, I'm good at fixing problems. He's actually good at coming up with concepts for businesses as well. So that's one of his areas of expertise. So we could probably assist in actually coming up with a concept, providing you pay us some money. We're happy to actually assist people to leverage those funds in a way that actually creates a multiple rather than just a simple bricks and mortar model.
Definitely. Vijay Sal, you want to chime in?
Do I want to jump in?
Yes, because I think that like interesting. I looked at you with puppy eyes, like Vijay Sal, do you really want to join in? Because Lakhi made a really valid point there. That one thing I would say that £1 million is a lot of money. And if you're fresh to the property market, then you don't want to do you really want to invest it in one go? Do you really want to run before you learn to walk? Because I think there should be stages, despite incentives and 5% mortgage deposits and stuff. There has to be, one has to find their footing in the property market. What is your take on the fact that somebody who has got £1 million and these incentives that are coming in, which always tempts you to, you want to make some quick money in the market, you're tempted to buy and invest and diversify. What is your take? Like, how should one go about it?
Okay, because I'm talking to the general market. Lakhi deals with high net worth individuals. So for people with deep pockets, £1 million is equal to maybe a small studio flat in London. So that market is different. The mindset and the understanding of people with deep pockets is different. So they have a different view on money. They want to put it in the hotspots. They want to put them in the key areas. They want to be in the city of London. They want to be in the square mile. So we don't want to talk about that. I want to go to the general populace. My general rule, the rule that I apply to most clients, customers who come to us is that I say very simply, slice up your investment money to 3 pieces. So 350,000, 350,000, and then one 300,000 lot. So with one lot, you need to look for long-term investment. So you need to remember something that you are going to keep for anything plus of 5 years. So from 5 years to 10 years, look at a model of a particular type of property, area, etc. And then from that 350,000, do your shopping, but make sure that money is going to be there long term. And anything that you put in long term, you're not looking really for yield as much as you are looking for capital gain. And capital gain comes, like Lakhi said, by buying an asset that needs value add, dilapidated, needs improvement, it's got land, can take planning, etc., etc. And if you can buy one of those or two of those, even three of those, depending on where you're going to buy it, you need to make sure that's not going to be required to be liquidated or to be refinanced in any way after you've spent the money on it. It is 5 years plus. Then comes the midterm. Anything is up to from 2 years up to 5 years. That is the second 350,000. Again, looking at what your model is, what type of asset you are going to acquire, what type of return. This is the type of property that would fall into a high capital growth, so a plot of land, or a property that has purely been, dilapidated and needs a certain spend cost on it. And once you've spent that money, it's in an area that will purchase immediately. That is the second type of investment, 350. The third bit of money, the 300,000, should always be kept as a reserve. And when I say reserve, I don't mean that you've not invested it. What I'm talking about is very short-term, quick opportunities. Somebody needs money fast, use it for unregulated bridging finance, or you find an asset that is available, you've got the cash, you can buy it, and in a back-to-back or a turnaround, you can make easy money for a key-to-key or a back-to-back as they're known. So you're purchasing it, but you assign the document of purchase straight onto a new buyer, and all you do is you make money in between. And in order to get that asset, you want to have deposit monies available. So that's the way I'd spend £1 million into property.
Now, the main aim is to bag £1 million and use these strategies. Let me see if these work. And so, yeah, that's been quite informative, as I can definitely say that, as basically I'm a starter in the property market as well. I don't have £1 million. I'm just learning all the ways and, the ways you can invest in it. It's a very basic question that I always see. If you got £1 million, how are you going to invest?
Start with ₹1 million, Kiona, and then we could convert it over a few years. Yeah. How much is £1 million anyway? What does £1 million equate to?
In £1 million, £1 billion.
A million. Oh, you're a billion. Wow. Okay. No, £1 million. rupees.
Why not?
Yeah. What is that? How many in pounds?
£10,000.
10,000. Well, it's you're only £990,000 shy of the million. You can work your way towards $1 million. Yes.
Definitely, that's a spirit. That's what keeps me up at night. Those £990,000 and the way to get there.
That's
So
right.
yeah, it's been really, really informative. And I think that, there's so many courses, because anybody who gets into property, the first thing they try and do is frame a course. There's so many strategies, but one thing that I realized from this entire conversation is no strategies like it has to be tailored and custom made for each and every different individual. There's not one fixed strategy that's going to work for all. Like it's not there's not one free size that fits all. So definitely, like one thing that so I would just round up, like one thing that you would say to somebody, like one word of advice who's doing all the, because I know personally I've been asked by people to sign up for courses for £250, sometimes really extortionate, like 5-day course, £5,000, make 100,000 easy from zero. And there are a lot that's going on in the UK market, right? Like most of the landlords, they're trying to do these online and make their own name in the ed tech space in terms of property investing and property marketing. So any word of advice for students or starters who are getting into these courses, trying to find their footing, at the same time they are trying to apply strategies but failing and don't know, they're still struggling to like make money in the property market?
Is that
Is
to
that
me? Or
Lakhi
should we
or
just start?
that to me? Right.
That's
Okay. Okay, I'll take it first. Not a problem. We'll turn it around. Okay. My only simple advice is if you've got limited, because this question comes out of the fact that you're talking about newcomers, but you're also talking about limited resources. Now, when a newcomer has limited resources, the best thing to do is supplement your weakness, and the weakness is your limited resources and your inabilities by buying or getting into the property market by making or founding a group, getting 3 or 4 like-minded students or upcomers or newbies together. Having that attitude solves lots of problems because it's like having more than one head. It's like having 10 heads or 5 heads. Now, that's one way of avoiding the lack of knowledge because everybody can pull together their knowledge. The second way of doing it again is pooling together everyone's finance and trying to acquire in a collective manner. It's not easy because you don't know each other and you don't really trust each other in that way, but it sometimes is better to learn by yourself than to learn without understanding the risks, because a lot of these training companies and property advisors, they don't give you all of the facts, and then you end up still being, short of important information. And if you spread the risk in what you're doing, it may be a cheaper way to learn about property. That's my little bit of advice.
Thank you. Now moving on to property, adding on to the Wiser report.
Yeah.
It's a thing now.
Yes.
Okay, so same question to me, I take it?
Yes.
Okay, so I think the key thing is that there's so much resources out there, and a lot of the training companies that are out there, they've got very similar training programs because a lot of them have actually attended each other's training programs, and then they've taken the knowledge and they've tried to get the best of all the training program to create theirs, to make theirs the best. So technically speaking, all 10, 20, 30, 40 companies that are providing the information, they're quite similar somewhat, and they're giving generically, they're all the same types of things that are there. So in summary, I would say just do your research, and there's lots of free resources and lots of books, so you don't need to spend tons of money. And once you're clear about what you're doing, you've got a budget in place, and if there's a particular course you want to do because that's the area that you want to specialize in, you already spent about a year researching, I would say, that's when you might want to pay for something, but only when you're clear about what the purpose is and what the result's going to be. So if you wanted to become an expert in developing properties, and that's the angle you want to focus in on, buying land, then you might just want to pay £500 for a particular course and just attend that particular one.
Excelente.
That answers the discussion really well, and that that's really helpful, because it's so, as Salim said, there's, we just say that there's limited resources, but at the same time you say that there are too many resources. So it's a double-edged sword, right? Which one do you go for? But one thing is to have the end results in mind. What am I, like, what is the person, say if I'm a student, what am I trying to derive out of this? If that perspective and that point is clear, then I think the rest just falls into place. It's been really informative. And I think that personally, like, this session has actually like enhanced my level of understanding by leaps and bounds, at least from where I was just an hour back. And it's really, really, it goes to the
Wow.
Wiser Report Hall of Fame. The fact that
Yeah, like that. Okay.
Pizza Hut
Excellent.
Express.
Pizza Express Hut. Okay. Leona, I think we're ending now. Are we closed?
yes, so we are gonna end this session. Thank you so much, Vijay and Lakhi, for turning up this morning. I think the topic was wonderful, and I think that we have covered almost all points. And thank you for your inputs. And yeah, look forward to seeing you on Monday and Friday. Yeah.
Take care.